I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this is one of the most fun builds that I have put together and played with in a very long time. Because while certain setups like Saren with the Sobek, or Cytonine with the Sobek, or pretty much any Warframe with the Sobek, are very fun, the combination of Gyre and the new Vadarya Prime Sniper with the Caliban Prime Access is thematically really well fitting, and it also just happens to be very effective at the same time because Gyre is a really great Warframe, and Vadarya Prime is a really great weapon, and both of them just so happen to be focused around the same thing, electricity. And when you combine them together, well, like I said, you get something that is both very fun and functional. Let me show you what's up with this one. I did make an entire video covering this brand new sniper because it is honestly one of my favorite weapons in the game at the moment. But Gyre is someone that I have not talked about in a very long time. I think it's been over 2 years actually since my last video, which was an ability DPS build, but she has become a significantly better weapons platform in the time since then, and that is the avenue that we are going to be taking today with the Vadarya Prime on her. To get the basics out of the way, the Vadarya Prime is a charged sniper. You can either ADS like this, or if you tap your alt fire, you will actually ADS with the scope, giving you an 8x zoom and a 50% critical damage buff. But as a charged sniper, you tap and it will charge all the way up, or you can hold down and then you will be able to hold the shot until you want to fire it. But the interesting thing about the Vadarya is that when you strike enemies, you will have a chance to summon lightning from the heavens down onto all other enemies around them. What's happening here is that whenever you damage an enemy, there is a 70% chance to spawn a single lightning strike, a 35% chance to spawn 2 lightning strikes, and then a 17.5% chance to spawn 3 lightning strikes. Right there, I only got 1. Fire again. We didn't get any. Again. Still none. Come on now, game. 1, 2. Yeah, you see how it works. If we read the unique trait on the weapon, it does say that strike damage scales with mods, and this means that the damage, critical, and status stats of the lightning strikes are identical to those of the primary fire, and obviously scale off of the mods we use to benefit those respectively. But importantly, something like Galvanized Aptitude does not benefit the lightning. They also do not see a benefit from Primed Firestorm, but things like Multishot and Punchthrough have some unique interactions, which I will demonstrate right now. If I throw on Galvanized Chamber and I throw on Shred to give us some Multishot and some Punchthrough, each individual enemy that you hit based on your punch through does have a chance to roll the lightning separately. So if I shoot right now, we get a lot more than just 3 lightning strikes. So punch through is a very necessary stat on the Vadarya because it increases its damage per shot significantly. Multi-shot also has a benefit here though, because if I shoot just this guy, we got more than 3 right there. And that is because each multi-shot pellet individually rolls the chance to spawn a lightning strike. So sometimes you will get over 3, sometimes you will just get under 3, but it just makes the lightning a little bit more consistent. Even if the final build that we use does not actually use multi-shot, preferring primary acuity, it is a good thing to know about how this weapon works. And then one last note before I cover how we are going to be building it and the special interaction that this weapon has with the blast status. The lightning itself is not actually a projectile. Instead, it will target the part of the enemy's body that you actually hit the main shot with. So if I hit this enemy in the head, all of the lightning strikes that come afterwards will hit headshots. But if I hit them in the body, they will deal body shots. It is tied to what you do with the main fire. So hitting headshots with this weapon is again another major benefit to the damage that the lightning will deal, as headshots have a multiplier that makes them significantly stronger than hitting an enemy in the body. Coming back to the mod menu though, if I am to mod on Blast with Thermite rounds and Rime rounds, you will notice an interesting thing starts to happen with this weapon when we trigger it. I got Blast right there. The blast went off, and we got another lightning strike that triggered blast, and then triggered another lightning strike that triggered blast again, and another lightning strike. So right now, blast is one of the very few ways to sort of infinitely chain this weapon. Because blast is coded as weapon damage, unlike any other status in the game, when a blast explosion goes off, it will re-trigger the lightning. And seeing as the lightning copies the stats of the base Vadarya, it also has a chance to then trigger blast, and if it does, then it will cause another lightning strike, and then infinitely trigger it on and on. Now, obviously, that would require a status chance over 100% and a 100% chance to proc blast, which is impossible under most circumstances, but you get what I'm trying to say. It is responsible, though, for this kind of build on the Vadarya. Yeah, very fun. But this is the Gyre video, so let me get back on topic. With all of that stuff being covered, I can actually show you how we want to mod the Vadarya, which looks like this. We are going entirely in on headshot damage here, because headshots will buff the lightning strikes. Running things like primary acuity, galvanized scope, primary deadhead will make the damage they deal absolutely insane. Obviously, on an Acuity build, we do not use any Multishot, and even though it does have the chance to re-roll it per individual Multishot, it just isn't as good as having a 350% weak point damage and critical chance benefit on both the primary fire and lightning strike, but we do use Shred because Punchthrough is one of the best ways to make this weapon a better AoE clearer. I am choosing to mod Blast on the weapon because even though it only has a low status chance of 40% and we are not using any Multishot, just having the opportunity to get a Blast proc is very, very strong, because even if we ignore the lightning aspect of the weapon, and I do actually get a Blast proc on someone, yeah, right there, you'll notice that I just deleted everything around them, and that is because Blast with Acuity and Deadhead and Galvanized Scope is just so absurdly... Do you see that right there? 7.3 million damage. Obviously, Acuity is the way to go here because you hit a headshot and then the lightning will hit a headshot and it benefits from Acuity and it does so much damage. And we're not even counting Gyre yet. But that is why I decided to use Blast, because it is another level of AoE on top of the lightning AoE, and everything here just makes it do way more damage than it should. A Primed Bane is going to double dip on said Blast explosions and any electric that we may trigger, which we are going to be triggering a lot of it through Gyre, Vital Sense, and Galvanized Scope for our crit chance and crit damage. One thing I will say about Galvanized Scope is that while it does give you a ton of critical chance on headshot, you do need to be aiming in to benefit from it, and this does carry over to the lightning strikes. So if you're not aiming in all the time, you probably want to just use critical delay here for a consistent 200%, but I tend to be ADSing a lot while using this weapon, so I use Galvanized Scope. Deadhead is our source of base damage because the weapon does not benefit from Galvanized Aptitude, not that we even have that many statuses to use it with, and we'll also add 30% to our headshot multiplier, further increasing the damage of everything on the build. So Vadarya by itself is clearly a very, very good weapon. As you can see, kind of just clearing everything while dealing millions of damage with each shot. And I didn't even trigger the lightning that consistently right there. But when we add Gyre into the mix, it becomes... I don't even have the words, to be honest. Starting off with Gyre's 1, which typically would be a subsume slot on a build like this, but is now one of the best damage buff abilities in the game due to its augment of Conductive Sphere. You can kind of ignore everything about this ability besides that because the damage it does is really meaningless, but Conductive Sphere is like if we were to add Toxic Lash onto Gyre, but made it electric, which is very thematically fitting and also just better than Toxin. This augment reads that projectiles that pass through Arcsphere have guaranteed electric status and plus 75% electric damage, which is kind of disingenuous because it does not need to be a projectile. Even a hit scan weapon like the Vadarya will benefit from this. Against some actual enemies, if I just shoot them while inside of it, you can actually see the radius a little bit more clearly. If I get outside of it, you will benefit from increased electric damage and then a forced electric proc. Now, unfortunately, the lightning strikes do not benefit from the forced electric, but obviously the damage increase is present on them as well. And this just makes Vadarya into an even crazier electric monster. Electric is a really, really good status, and when you pair it with this augment, well, like I said before, it's like adding Toxic Lash onto Gyre with the electric status, which is significantly better. One important note though is that you can actually stack these Arcspheres on top of each other to benefit from the augment 3 times. At base, it is just a 75% electric damage buff, but if we are to throw 3 of them down, it is now a 225% electric buff, and we will also trigger 3 electric dots at minimum, not counting any that we roll on the weapon separately. This is, and I don't really know how to state this well, utterly broken. If I bring us back to the actual build on the Vadarya, you will see just how much damage this is going to add. 7.3 million seems to kind of be our like damage cap for whatever reason. Oh, 6.1 million right there. Like, holy. Oh. Yeah, so that is a great example of what can happen if you get enough blast chains going on, which is kind of luck, but you will delete everything near you immediately. Going past Arcsphere though, Pillage is going to be used over her second ability because it contributes both really well to her survivability and also makes the enemies that we want to kill with our Vadarya significantly weaker because it takes away their own shields and armor. I'm going to guess that you are already very familiar with this one, so I will not go very in depth about it, but if I bring these enemies back in, you will see that when we cast it, it summons a wave that is duration based on how far it covers, and these enemies have lost some of their armor. If I now cast again, because we are over 50%, the enemies have no armor, which entirely removes their 90% damage reduction, and should mean that with the same build, we are now going to deal even more damage. 7.8 million, 3.1, ooh, 10 million. Remember that I've got no viral or anything else here. Cathode Grace is a really interesting one, stating that you gain a brief burst of increased critical chance and energy regen, with each kill extending the duration of the ability, and casting is on a cooldown. Simply put, you cast this ability, you get a critical chance bonus on your weapons, and then you start to regen energy. Both of those stats scale off of her strength, so if you look right now, we are generating 3.43 energy per second, and then we are gaining 114% critical chance on our Vadarya. Right now on the weapon with Galvanized Scope, we have a 40% base CC, which combines with Scope for a final 168%, and then if we add on the 114 from Cathode Grace, it becomes 213%. Which guarantees orange crits and pushes us into the red crit territory with this weapon. But don't forget that we also have primary acuity here, which is adding 350% more critical chance if we hit a headshot. And that means that with acuity, scope, and gyre, we have a final 353% CC, which is insane. And something that I didn't mention earlier is that at this strength value, when we have 3 of the Arcspheres up at once, the Conductive Sphere bonus goes from 171 to 513%. Again, utterly insane. A lot more interesting than Cathode Grace though is Rotorswell, and I'm going to demonstrate this one with some enemies because it just makes it a hell of a lot easier. Activating this one will cause Gyre's kind of skirt thing to go crazy, and then a ring of electric-y looking things appear around her. If you now get near enemies, you will force trigger the electric status while also dealing a menial amount of damage. But more importantly, if I am to strike an enemy, you will notice that I get an electric discharge by hitting a crit. And that is because Gyre's entire kit is kind of based around doing these crits, but you see that electric that I'm getting? This is why combining Gyre with the Vadarya is so potent, because she does what the Vadarya does with her abilities, but if we add in Vadarya doing its whole electric strike thing, it kind of just gets even crazier. As you can see, we're getting a hell of a lot of electric going on here, especially with Blast added into the mix. These lightning discharges from the ability will strike up to 5 other enemies within a base 10 meter radius around them. They deal a tiny amount of damage and also force trigger the electric status, like when you get near enemies. 2 of these can happen from 2 separate crits simultaneously, but afterwards the ability does go on a 1-second cooldown, so you can't really just spam the electric discharges from Rotorswell. But 1 second isn't really that long, especially because Vadarya is uncapped on how much it can get the electric, so you won't really notice this. The main problem with damage from Rotorswell is that enemy armor just kind of makes it do absolutely nothing. But remember that we do have Pillage here, which is going to remove the armor and shields that the enemies have, so Rotorswell actually becomes effective at DPSing enemies, and that discharge range at 145 goes up from 10 meters to 14.5 meters. Some other notes about the ability is that it grants you a 1.5 times multiplier to your movement speed, and can break boxes and stuff, so she is a sort of pseudo-looter frame when you're running through a mission, but you know, you're kind of really just focusing on killing everything. The box breaking is an added benefit that we ain't going to complain about. There is a very important augment here though, and that is Cathode Current, because Rotorswell is a duration-based ability, but Cathode Grace allows you to infinitely extend Rotorswell like you can with Cathode Grace. You see here that you get duration per kill with a cap of 60 seconds. This means that if you are continuously killing enemies, Cathode Grace will never run out, which is good. But having to recast Rotorswell is very annoying. So with this augment, we can 1, extend it as long as we are getting kills, and 2, as you can see here, eliminating an enemy while Cathode Grace is active will release an additional discharge from Rotorswell with 200% damage. And that is very powerful. Getting more electric discharges is kind of the name of the game with Gyre. So what is actually the build we are running here? Well, it is a shield tank build with Pillage, because we do cast this ability quite often. It refills our shields and overshields entirely, adaptation giving us some damage resist, and then we are building for good strength to benefit Pillage, Arcsphere, Cathode Grace, and Rotorswell. So we are running Transient Fortitude and On will Intensify, and then positive range for stretch so that we do have a good discharge range on Rotorswell. Duration is the scaler for how far Pillage will cover, because it covers 20 meters per second. Range only actually increase in the base radius that the ability starts at, and then having decent duration is good for Arcsphere, Cathode Grace. Pretty much every stat here positively affects each of her abilities, and then we don't need any efficiency because the ability does already generate 3.43 energy per second, and that combined with Arcane Energize is more than enough to manage our energy economy. A weird choice you might see here is Arcane Momentum, and that is because the Vadarya has a really long reload of 2.6 seconds, and I kind of hate it. But there's 1, no room for reload speed mods on the weapon, and 2, all of the reload speed mods don't provide enough of this stat to make a meaningful difference, whereas Arcane Momentum provides 150% reload speed to snipers. We don't really need another Arcane here, so using this one is a major QOL benefit, because without it, this is what the reload looks like. That is a super long time, but if I bring these enemies back in here, get Arcane Momentum active, look at how much shorter that is. You definitely want to be using Arcane Momentum. Makes the Vadarya a significantly smoother experience. But besides that, Corrosive Projection will assist in removing armor from enemies with Pillage, and it is a pretty simple build besides that. Companion-wise, I do recommend you use a Nautilus because its Precept of Cordon will group enemies up, and then seeing as Electric is an AoE status, obviously having grouping is the next best thing that we can apply here. Make sure to run Burst Laser Prime with this specific build so that you get good enough priming with it. And again, here is what the Nautilus setup looks like. Even more fire rate and more crit damage. Nothing too crazy. Your secondary and your melee do not matter, though Kratos for the movement speed benefits like usual. And then on your epitaph or your primer or whatever, you can use Amalgam Barrel Diffusion to make your dodges much quicker. I should also note that Gyre does have a unique dodge animation, and when you are using it with the Amalgam Barrel Diffusion mod, it goes way farther than normal dodges, the same as Protea or Dante. For whatever reason, Warframes with unique dodges cross a different distance than the Warframes without one. Not sure why. I really wish that we could apply these animations to other Warframes. I would genuinely buy Gyres or Proteas and use them on other characters all the time. Lastly, Archon Shards wise, I'm just using 3 Crimsons for 30% more ability strength. This is not needed at all, but I really like it. Casting speed is something I would say you do need though. You're going to feel the casting times on Cathode Grace and Rotorswell really hard if you don't use these, so I would give them a shot if you have them to spare. I like Xeneric for my focus school, so I get a free cast on Cathode Grace when I start a mission, but that is just personal preference. As for how the build looks when we get everything active, we get our Cathode Grace, Rotorswell, hit him with Pillage, 3 up the Arcsphere, and just start to deal damage. Everything is going to get eviscerated pretty quickly. I feel like it's kind of unfair to showcase this against base level enemies, so I will bring in some Eximus units. Hit him with the Pillage. Yeah, Gyre herself doesn't really do much against Overguard, but the weapon itself is dealing a ton of damage. And then against a baseline group of heavy gunners, which is still not really that representative of what you fight on the Steel Path, get rid of all their armor and... yeah, it's a really fun one. 12 million damage right there. Just having all the electric discharges from Gyre happen while you're also getting them from the same time from the Vadarya is just so satisfying. Just electricity everywhere, damage everywhere. It is a really fun combo. And who doesn't love hitting constant red crits for over 5 million damage, most times over 10 once you're actually in mission? Because even these enemies, like a Butcher, bro? What is a Butcher doing against this right here? Bro just got absolutely eviscerated. Then we got Pillage to keep us alive and remove the armor off enemies. This is like... I love this build, y'all. I fuck with it so hard. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'm interested to see how this video does because Gyre is not a particularly popular frame, but the Vadarya is a super popular weapon at the moment. And on Gyre, it is more fun than any other frame I'm using it with. So I wonder how you guys will feel about this one. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the gameplay, and I will see you soon for a top 10 melees list. Yeah, I finally got the Nami solo and the dual Eker, so I am getting around to it. And then after that, Valkyrie perfected maybe? Hopefully? I'm not sure. I'll see you all very soon. Peace.